Hello, hello, hello. It is Richard Dixon. And we have Bruce Fenton on the line with us. Bruce Fenton is an unrepentant capitalist. Good for you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Founder and president of Atlantic Financial, Inc., an independent capital management firm that focuses on global investing, particularly in China, the Middle East, and other emerging markets. And you believe that these bailouts have got to stop. Have they stopped? Are we done now? Do you see another big chunk of change flying out the door anytime soon?
Oh, sure. Well, even if they stopped voting on more bailouts, there's still a bunch of TARP money.
Oh, sure.
Amazingly, they've dwindled it down to a measly $100 billion or so, but that money's still there. They will still be writing checks. Even after all the phony outrage by Congress, they're probably still going to write more checks to AIG and these other companies.
Oh, I guarantee they will, as a matter of fact. And, that and of course, the $787 billion stimulus package, that's not being spent quite as fast. And then, of course, you had the $410 billion omnibus spending bill. So the money is just flying fast and furious here. But what is it about the bailouts? Well, first off, I heard that we were going to have another $750 billion stimulus bill. But after these tea parties that took place the other day, I'm starting to think that maybe they're not going to do that, huh?
Yeah, they've been talking about another one that's in exactly the $750 billion range. These numbers get so large, people start to get immune to it. You don't realize these are the largest spending bills in the history of our country. You're talking about expenses on the level of, far above what Eisenhower spent on the entire highway system and what the entire World War II cost. It's massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, you got to think back then, it was different amounts of money that we were dealing with. I lived in a time and remember a time when the budget of the entire United States government was $1 trillion, and that seemed like an astronomical sum. But, when you start talking, you're talking about in terms of millions of dollars, people could be like, millions, that's a lot of money. And then you get into billions of dollars, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's astronomical. And then you get to trillions, and it's like, I can't even comprehend that. Basically, I'm hearing blah, blah, blah money. Like trillion, my brain can't even comprehend trillion. And I keep threatening to link it to my website, but have you seen the physical representation of what $1 trillion looks like?
Yeah. I have a thing on one of the YouTube videos that I did, which kind of talks about what we could have done with the money just from one bill. Now, I don't think it's a good idea because I don't think we should have done it at all. But if we would have, I mean, it's amazing. You could have built a huge Harvard-sized university in every single state. You could have given hundreds and hundreds of millions to scientists to try and cure cancer and things like that. You could have given every veteran in the country a $2,000 bonus for their service. I mean, it's done all of these things. And again, I don't think that's a good idea. I put there as an illustration to show just how massive this amount of money is. Okay,
well, now let's talk about whether or not it's actually having any effect, because you're the guy who should have the inside scoop on this. I personally maintain, TARP bailout or no TARP bailout, I think we'd be in largely the same position we're in today had there not been any TARP bailout at all.
Right. It does have a great effect on the people getting the bonuses because they get to go buy Ferraris and ride around on private jets on the taxpayer nickel. But other than that, it doesn't really have an economic effect. And for the other rest of the poor, foolish Americans who are footing the bill for this, the only effect is that it hurts our economy.
If I'm not mistaken, by the way, we haven't actually purchased one toxic asset yet, have we?
We don't even know what we've gotten for this money. And, people have outraged about this $168 million in bonuses. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's way more public bonuses that have been announced. Merrill Lynch was $220 million. And then you look at the real money. Like you said, there's a big difference between millions and billions. You look at the real money behind this, the tens of billions, say, well, where does that go? It goes to counterparties. Well, what are counterparties? You think counterparties are some, friendly organization out there handing money out to the working man? No, the counterparties are other giant investment firms, many of them foreign. They're not even American, getting tens of billions of dollars of our money. And where does that go? Guess what? It goes to bonuses and to their clients. So,
okay, well, but let me be clear, because I don't want to give you a false illusion here. My take on the bonuses has been twofold. Number one, $165 million in bonuses compared to $185 billion in bailout money that's gone to AIG is like giving somebody literally $1,000 minus a dime.
Exactly.
Are you really going to get worked up about that dime? That's ridiculous. If you want to be upset about something, this reminds me of when people got all had up about $4 ATM fees, and I was saying, are you kidding? Look at what you're paying in taxes. Right. You're really concerned about the ATM fee?
Yeah, they could pay those bonuses for 100 years.
Yes. before they even started to make it, to get to the point where they were, eating into the 185 billion. Okay, the other side of the coin is, these bonuses are how business is done. If you're going to bail out a business, you have to pay. How come nobody's getting upset about the Frappuccino machine? How come nobody's getting upset about these gigantic? They could conduct business in a small set of cubicles in the basement of a church somewhere. They don't. They have multi-million-dollar rents that they have to pay on gigantic office buildings there in beautiful Connecticut, and nobody's getting upset about the fact that they're doing stuff in granite office buildings. So if you're going to bail out the business, then you're bailing it out hook, line, and sinker, and that means you're paying the bonuses, you're paying for the coffee machines, you're paying the rent on the big buildings, and you just have to accept that fact. For some reason, people want to get head up about that. I say, in for a penny, in for a pound. Either don't bail them out at all, or bail them out and shut up about it. Am I wrong on that?
Well, the thing is, you want to. I think we shouldn't have bailed them out at all.
I agree. I agree.
So it does get. When I see a company like Citigroup who gets to have what I call a privilege of being able to name Shea Stadium, which cost them $400 million, that's a privilege that they get some great advertising out of that. That would have been better to go to some company that didn't make mistakes and didn't invest in subprime. There's plenty of good investment firms out there who had nothing to do with this mess that they're struggling, just like all investment firms, and they don't have the money to pay the bonuses. And I mean, imagine if you ran an investment firm and you didn't have anything to do with subprime, and you have to go to your employees bonus this year, and your competitor, because they were stupid, is able to do it. It hurts the whole system. I agree with you. I mean, once you've given the money, it's kind of hard to complain.
Yeah,
you drop in the bucket. It's a tiny amount. So
you kind of bought your.
It's an overall mess.
You bought your own trouble with that. Okay, so here's the question. In terms of these bailouts, and I guess one could say that we're at the end, but like you say, they're still writing checks. If we had not bailed out any of these businesses whatsoever, obviously some of them would have gone out of business. Is there such a thing as, quote, too big to fail, unquote?
Absolutely not. The economics are driven mostly by smaller and innovative businesses. They become large businesses. You look at the decade, the 80s and the 90s, it's the Microsofts that came from nothing in the 70s to become great leaders in our economy. So there's, that kind of innovation and growth is good for the economy. And if a company fails, then so what? I mean, I'm pretty familiar with this industry. I've been in it nearly 20 years now, and I still can't understand. I mean, we have all these members of Congress saying these vague things about, well, the whole system would fail. Well, explain it to me. Who cares? I mean, if AIG fails and it drags down the other 10 big firms, so what? I don't really see how that's going to hurt us, because there's plenty of other firms that didn't participate in this, and some of them are rather large. They would fill that void right away. Merrill Lynch went out of business. The next day, probably 80% of those employees would go over to companies like LPL, which is the 8th largest investment firm. They had nothing to do with this mess, and they're actually a competitor of mine, so I'm not plugging LPL. But they were, because they were smart, they're being penalized by having to compete against a company who's 10 times their size and who gets free money from the government. So
exactly.
It's a complete economic mess.
Exactly. We're chatting with Bruce Fenton, who is the founder and president of Atlantic Financial, Inc. I think the government loses an awful lot of credibility as well, Bruce, when you sit and listen to them say over and over again that GM, in terms of GM, well, bankruptcy is not an option. Well, bankruptcy is not an option. Bankruptcy is clearly not an option. There's no option on bankruptcy. Good heavens, we can't allow them to declare bankruptcy. You know what? Maybe you guys should just declare bankruptcy. At that point, I think the American people look at the government and go, you really don't know what you're talking about, do you? Stick around. We're going to chat with Bruce Fenton some more about bailout mania and what we can expect to happen next.